Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're very excited to bring to you this session as a collaboration between Invention to Innovation at Simon Fraser University and AgAct, the Agricultural Genomics Action Centre. For those who may be new to our organizations, Invention to Innovation, or I2I, is an initiative at Simon Fraser University that supports researchers in translating their discoveries to real-world applications. Their work focuses on building the skills, tools, and pathways needed to unlock the entrepreneurial mindset and build innovation skills and systems to move ideas beyond the lab and into commercialization and impact. And AgAct, the Agricultural Genomics Action Centre, is a knowledge mobilization hub supporting Genome Canada's climate-smart agriculture and food systems research portfolio. This national initiative brings together partners across academia, industry, and government to advance climate-smart innovation in Canada's agri-food sector. A key part of AgAct's work is strengthening knowledge translation and ensuring research leads to meaningful, real-world outcomes. Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping notes. We encourage you to share your questions today using the Q&A function on the bottom navigation panel in Zoom. We'll be monitoring questions as they come in, and we've set aside time at the end of the session today for Q&A. And if you'd like to see closed captions in either French or English, there's an option to turn them on that same navigation bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Now for today's session. Today's webinar is grounded in an important challenge. While Canada ranks among the world's top countries for research, talent, and investment, we continue to lag in translating that strength into commercial products, intellectual property, and tangible economic impact. This gap is especially critical in agriculture and food security, where climate pressures and global uncertainty demand faster movement from discovery to deployment. With that in mind, today's webinar will explore practical pathways for moving agri-food research beyond publications and toward commercialization, policy influence, and real-world impact. We're especially fortunate today to be joined by our speaker, Rahul Singh. Rahul is the director of the BC Centre for Agritech Innovation, or BCCAI for short, hosted at SFU. He holds a PhD in microbiology and began his career as a scientist before transitioning into an innovation leadership role. He focuses on bridging academia, industry, and Canada's public-private innovation ecosystem to accelerate technology development and commercialization. Today, he will share actionable insights on how to position your research to strengthen Canada's innovation output. With that, I will turn it over to you, Rahul.
Thank you, Alex, for the kind introduction. Good day, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here, and I hope you are all doing well. Thanks to the AgAct team and the I2I network for hosting this session and for the opportunity to talk about innovation and commercialization in agriculture and agri-food sectors. I'm privileged to be joining you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples and Coquitlam as well. And I would also acknowledge the Kekat, Kedzi, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Saugeen peoples, the lands of all these people where SFU's 3 campuses resides. Before turning to the main topic, I would like to introduce the BC Centre for Agritech Innovation, or BCCAI as we call it. The center's mission is to empower the agriculture sector by de-risking technology adoption for greater productivity, profitability, and sustainability. We are funded by Pacific Economic Development Canada, the Regional Economic Development Agency for BC and Yukon, and the Province of British Columbia via Ministry of Jobs and Economic Growth. We focus on 3 areas: industry agritech projects, skill development via training and workshop, and establishing a robust agritech network in BC and beyond. We have a provincial mandate, and we work across all economic regions in BC. We work with diverse partners and stakeholders, ranging from agritech companies, farmers, producers, growers, processors, post-secondary institutes, and all levels of government, from municipal government to provincial, federal, as well as indigenous. In addition, we also collaborate with our wide network of national and global partners. The center was established in late 2022, and since then, BCCAI has co-invested over $20 million dollars in 36 plus projects, creating 38 products, services, and processes, creating 100 plus jobs. We have also delivered 25 training programs with several ecosystem partners in BC and trained over 2,000 highly qualified personnel. And we have also engaged with over 600 partners, and over 900 people have joined our various events in the last 3 years. And if you would like to learn more about how we work, what our role in the ecosystem is, and how our programs are offered, I'm happy to have a separate chat with you. Reach out to me via email as well. Now, let's move to the main topic and review why we need to push for innovation, translation, and commercialization of research and technology. And in my presentation, I will focus on Canada's status on innovation, the roadmap from invention to innovation, the timeline for technology commercialization, the value of intellectual property, the various stages venture financing comes from, and finally, how scientists like us can strengthen the innovation ecosystem in Canada. I want to be clear in the beginning that this is not at the expense of discovery research, which, from my perspective, remains the primary driver for knowledge creation and innovation in Canada and globally. Now, we all know that Canada has solved some key global challenges. And just look at these innovations. So, for example, insulin, you probably all know that insulin was discovered by Canadian researchers, Frederick Benting and colleagues in 1921, but it was commercialized by Eli Lilly. And then Java, the programming language, was also developed by Canadian engineer James Gosling and commercialized by Sun Microsystems. Another Canadian invention is cardiac pacemaker that was originally invented by John Hobbs and again was commercialized in the US primarily. And something that might be most interesting or related to this audience is Cas9, the gene editing enzyme that was discovered by Sylvain Monod, and it is now being patented by the US leading groups as well. And it is fair to say that these inventions or innovations are not generally associated with Canada. When people talk about these innovations or inventions, they don't really associate Canada with that. And the country did well to capitalize on the benefits of these inventions and discoveries. Cas9 may be most interesting to this audience, and as you may know that Sylvain Monod and his team at University of Laval published in Nature confirming Cas9's role as a nuclease, creating double stranded breaks in target DNA at precise locations. However, the re-engineering of the system into general purpose gene editor was done by Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier, and the re-engineering breakthrough was claimed by the University of California and the Broad Institute. And we'll talk more about that later as well in my presentation. And again, this is not to undermine the accomplishments of Monod and other Canadian innovators, but to highlight the potential we have, but that also that we failed on discovery patents or in-house commercialization of these inventions and discoveries. Despite this potential, Canada is lagging in innovation outputs. And we can take a deeper look at what it means. If you look at this chart, it shows the top 15 most innovative countries in the world. As per Global Innovation Index from the World Intellectual Property Organization. Now, Canada does not appear in the top 15. In fact, it was ranked at 14th in 2024, but then went back again, below the top 15 list. The list ranks Switzerland at the top, while if you notice, China has made remarkable progress in the last many years to be appearing at the 10th spot in the list. The list also breaks the myth that Canada is a small market because Switzerland, Sweden, Denmark are also a small market compared to US and other bigger economies. So this is the current status of innovation based on this index. But you can ask how do we know that the problem is with output but not the input? Let's look at the input as well. So we will look at the input based on expenditure on on education as percentage of GDP and full-time equivalent researchers per billion population. So if you look at the expenditure on education as percentage of GDP, um, Canada's and Switzerland's input is higher than China. And you can argue that Switzerland is doing well because they are spending most in terms of percent of GDP on education. But China is doing less, but it's still it ranks highly on innovation compared to Canada. But if you look at researchers per million population, you see that Canada and Switzerland are comparable and more than double that of China, but still Canada lacks the two on innovation. In fact, China's performance despite low FTE on researchers is rather impressive. Let's have a look at the innovation output now. And we will look at just one factor here, patents, which is arguably the most important indicator for innovation. In 2023, Canada produced 41,000 patents, which was 10% lower compared to that in 2022, the year before. Whereas Switzerland grew by almost 5% with over 10,000 patents, and China grew by 4% with a staggering 1.52 million patents. What is worse, if you look at the table on the right, is that even on innovation inputs, where we have been performing well, retaining a spot within the top 10 nations until 2024, we have started to go down. So we are ranked like 13th in 2025 for innovation input as well. So we have started to actually decline on both. We're already doing less on innovation output, but we're also going down on the input side as well. And I call this a serious situation, as the impact will not be felt now, but in the years and decades to come when other economies will monetize some of these patents. And I will encourage you to read Global Innovation Index report for details if you have interest in this particular space. And with that, we will take a poll questions. We have few poll questions designed for this presentation as well. So let's take the first poll question, which is focused on have you ever filed a patent? So please take a moment to complete this poll. We'll give a few seconds. Okay, let's last call for anyone who has not submitted their response. Okay, so let's close the poll, and Alex, if you can share, I can share the results actually as well. So we can see that people filed a patent. 3 people have responded. 10 people have wrote a research paper, and 7 have designed a developed protocol. So a fair number of people have actually experienced or owns intellectual property, which is great. Give me a second. So let's look at how we can improve it. And the good news is that there is recognition of this fallout at most level of government, academia, and industry. And you may have seen a range of initiatives and activities that continue to address the gaps and provide resources to enable scientists and innovation champions like yourself to advance made in Canada inventions and discoveries for commercialization and social and economic benefits. And it is important because we need to recognize the problem before we start to solve the problem, right? So this is very encouraging from my perspective. What are the first steps towards addressing this gap is change in mindset. And imagine if graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, and early career faculty members are trained to translate and commercialize their breakthrough innovations. And as this cartoon, infographic shows, that the pathway to commercialization seems straightforward. We do research and development, develop a prototype, we raise funds and launch the product, and commercialize it. And we do excel in R&D in most cases, and we also likely, good at developing prototypes, for example. But we often struggle at raising funds compared to US and other markets, and also in scaling, companies or ventures for commercialization and large-scale production. And these gaps, can be filled by training scientists at earlier levels, on technology commercialization. In reality, the pathway from lab to market is not as straightforward as I showed in the previous figure because you have many steps that you have to follow, like when you go from invention to innovation or from lab to market. Um, Aside from research and proof of concept, we need to protect the IP, or intellectual property, validate product market fit. We have to develop a minimum viable product before we scale. And with that, we'll take actually another question before we move to the next slide, which is focusing on the technology readiness level. So, Alex, if you can share, yeah, how familiar you are with the technology readiness level scale. Okay, I think we have 100% people answered, so we can end poll. And uh, are the results shared, Alex? I think I'm not able to share from my end. I
Yep, they
think
should be shared.
yeah. So that's yeah, very interesting. Most people are fully aware, and a few somewhat, and just a little not at all. So I can. This is good, yeah, insight for me too as we move to the next slide, which focuses on the technology readiness level. Um, give me a second. Yeah, so as we embark on lab to market journey, or when you intend to commercialize invention or innovations coming out of a research lab, it is very critical to have a clear understanding of the readiness level of your technology or invention or discovery, or as we call it TRL. And for those like you who are not familiar with TRL, it was designed by NASA primarily for space engineering technologies, but the scale is now widely used across industries and sectors. And if you focus on the first three TRL 1 to 3 levels, it basically starts from basic research and takes you towards developing a proof of concept stage. And things like for entrepreneurs, it becomes more exciting at TRL 4, where they can think about developing a prototype and take their invention or discovery to the real world environment outside of the lab for field testing, for example, or for field trials, where they can really test whether the discovery or inventions is really working in the environment they would like it to work or not. And then as we advance from TRL 7 to 9, that's where invention, it becomes very serious in terms of from a commercial standpoint, because then you have to really build a venture, create a product and take it develop a field ready prototype or minimum viable product, which you basically take to the market eventually for commercialization. And that's when you reach the TRL 9 stage, when you are in the market, that's when you have your invention from TRL 1 translated into an innovation which is being used by end users or users of those technologies. Um, we'll take one more poll question here, which focuses on if you're developing a technology, what is the technology readiness level of your innovation? This may not be applicable to all of you, but let's see how many people have any technology and then they understand which level it is at. We have 6 responses so far, but let's give a couple of more seconds. Um, it's possible that not everybody is working with technology, so we can maybe we'll end the poll now and let's see the results. So it seems like the maximum level we are seeing here is 6, which is great actually. So yeah, no, it's good that we have some diversity in TRL levels as we see here as well. And now since we are talking about innovation, let's also talk about like different kinds of innovations, and we'll focus on just two types of innovation here. One is radical innovation, which essentially is a technology when it enables vast improvements in current performance attributes. And we are talking about an order of magnitude difference, from an existing technology. That's when you can call it like radical innovation. Or if you add entirely new attributes or bring the cost substantially down, again, 30-50%, for any particular commodity or for any technology. That's when things become radically innovative. And from agriculture or genomics standpoint, you can think about gene edited crops that can reduce significantly reduce the breeding type or development of using breeding using traditional practices, for example, or engineering microbiome for soil using AI driven breeding platforms, and also RNA-based crop protection, for example, and digital twins for crops is also a very significant area of work. So all these technologies from agriculture food sector perspective could be called or fall into radical innovation space. And then we can look at the other side where not every innovation would be radical. In many cases, we are looking at incremental benefits or impact of an innovation or technology or discovery on an existing technology, and those would fall into incremental innovation space as well. So here we can think about technologies or improvements such as if there are improvements in marker assisted selection for breeding or genomic selection optimization, or any improvement in existing microbial formulations, or faster phenotyping technologies, for example. And again, region-specific cultivars or varieties that are being developed would fall into incremental innovation too. And finally, for example, data integration in breeding platforms or programs would also fall under incremental innovation. And again, understanding these, what kind of innovation we are working on, focused on, is important because when you go to commercialization, your market, the value for investors, would be determined by all these understanding and factors. Here, I would focus on that what are the challenges when we try to commercialize science-based or deep tech ventures and agri-tech ventures as well, compared to information technology-based ventures. So on this graph, you have on the y-axis uncertainty from low to high, and then on the x scale you have time to commercialization from low to high as well. And the blue dot shows R&D cost, and the red circle, or the red is talking about commercialization cost of a particular technology. And you can see that technology ventures have lower risk, lower uncertainty, and lower time to commercialize, and there also R&D cost to develop IT-based venture is also much lower compared to deep tech ventures, where you can think about biopharmaceuticals, for example, drug development, vaccine development. It takes long time to develop those, but there are significant costs involved in commercialization of those products as well. That's why you see a lot more expensive drugs coming out when using gene editing technologies as well. So there is a significant difference here that we must be aware of. And if you look at agri-tech or agriculture, agri-food based ventures, they are relatively in a better space compared to biopharma, I would say, but still much higher than the IT-based venture. In the next slide, we can see those timelines. So the timelines, for example, for IT-based venture for development is 0 to 2 years, whereas for biomed, it is from 10 to 15 years. And for genome-edited crops, I've used that as an example. It can be 4 to 10 years, and 7 to 12 years is a traditional breeding time scale for comparison. And looking at the R&D cost, again, for IT, as you can see, it is much small, 0 to 3 million, compared to almost 5 to 10 million roughly for both biomed and genome edited crops. But the significant difference you see is coming in the commercialization cost, which for IT is still within $10 million, but for biomed it can go up to almost $1 billion. But it's relatively cheaper compared to biomed, for genome edited crops, which is $4 to $16 billion, depending upon if you have to follow a regulatory pathway or a non-regulatory pathway. But then uncertainty about technology is also different for these three types of ventures. So for genome edited crops, it's medium to high, primarily because of different regulatory requirements, also because of weather, climate change, and so many other factors that direct how the venture would eventually be successful or not. And again, market uncertainty is also considered higher for genome-edited crops, for example, primarily because of public perception, acceptance, and so many other variabilities, cost of commodities and whatnot, that is tagged along with these ventures. Um, I wanted to pause here and take any questions, or if we have questions in the Q&A, Stephanie or Alex, if you can see that, happy to, respond to that. Otherwise, we can keep going as well.
We don't have any questions right now, but I would just encourage anybody, if you have any questions along the way, please enter them in the Q&A box down below.
Great. Yeah. Feel free to put your questions. We'll answer as we go, and we have some spot for question answers as well. And in the end, also we will have some discussions.
We've got one question, Rahul, if you want to pause. Question from Lester. Would you say that climate change is a unique risk for ag ventures?
I would say it's a it's something that you cannot always plan with. It's by the time you develop your cultivar and the response of the climate has shifted a bit, like in the region, or so it's quite region specific. So you have to be mindful of those, because it's a long-term thing. It's not just you develop once and then it's ready forever. So I think climate is more of an uncertainty that we have to kind of play around. That's what my yeah comment would be on that. But this is not, for example, a risk for biomed or IT, right? Like they are insulated from the impact of climate.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, let's move to intellectual property. And since we attributed patents as the contributing factor for Canada's low innovation output, we'll focus on intellectual property in this section. And as most of you know that there are four main types of intellectual properties or IPs: patents, which are technical inventions such as chemical composition, pharmaceutical drugs, complex machinery or designs that are new, unique, and usable in some type of industry. Some of you, I mean, you are holder of IP, and some of you are holder of patents as well. And then you have copyrighted or copyright material. That is for this audience, your research articles, thesis, new products, protocols, that you develop in lab, for example, would fall under copyright. Then there are trademarks, a word, phrase, or design that identify and differentiate your goods and services, and also with your competitors as well, that would fall within trademark. And then trade secrets, which could include formulas, information, and strategies that you want to build in-house and don't want to share publicly. So that would fall into trade secret. Now, why IP knowledge is so crucial, aside from certainly helping us on to do better on innovation in rankings, um, um, it is very critical, especially if you want to commercialize or plan to commercialize your innovation or invention. It helps you identify inventions that qualify for IP protection, because there's a very complex procedure for that. And it helps you plan properly towards commercialization to realize full benefits. Because if you know, what kind of innovation you have, it's radical, incremental, where it fits, that would help you. Securing your IP, all that is owning your IP rights, allow you to earn financial and other benefits. And we'll see that in a bit, how it can be a big battle as well. And eventually it helps you to contribute to social and economic benefits as well when you get the benefits. And then also it leads to stimulating innovation, as we saw, why we are doing bad on innovation rankings. And the major contributor is just not having enough patents. Let's have a look at CRISPR-Cas9 again. because I think this is very relevant to this audience as well, but also a great example or case study for us to look at as well. So this audience must know that in agriculture, CRISPR has been used to produce, many things like herbicide-resistant crops, climate-adapted animals, gene-edited food have entered in consumer market already. So you have Japan, which is using CRISPR-edited tomatoes, launched in 2021, and then US releasing CRISPR-modified mustard greens in 2023, and then gene-edited disease-resistant pigs have also been approved by US FDA. Um, you might be aware of the big battle that is ongoing, for claims on CRISPR gene editing, particularly for eukaryotic cells as well. So, this is a large legal battle, and this dispute is between University of California, University of Vienna, and Emmanuel Charpentier, known as CVC, this group, and then Broad Institute, MIT, and Harvard, collectively called as Broad Party, on the other side. And the core of the dispute is Claim 15 of Broad's patent or US patent, where CVC claims that CRISPR-Cas9 system is not restricted to any organisms, while Broad claims its right to use CRISPR-Cas9 system in the eukaryotic environment. So that's where the primary cause is, and it has significant implications like on use of technology by so many researchers and innovators in the agriculture, agri-food sector in particular, and of course in the human health as well. So if you have followed this story, you might know, but just to freshen up your memory, in 2017, a US court favored Broad and MIT for their rights on the patents for use in eukaryotic cell. In 2022, the Patent Trial and Appeal Board, or PTAB, reaffirmed that Broad owns key patents. But in 2025, the Court of Appeals of the Federal Circuit returns the first to invent issue back to the PTAB, suggesting that maybe University of California group had demonstrated that this could be applied across the board, and they were probably okay to have the claim on all organisms, not just limiting it on the eukaryotic side, which MIT was claiming. But in just a few days ago, actually, on March 2026, PTAB has reviewed that appeal and then favored again in favor of Broad that they retain the right to have applications in the eukaryotic cells. So this uh, patent battle is very interesting to follow because it has significant implication in the sector as well, but also it tells you how critical it is to keep track of what discovery you're doing and how it should be patent so that your rights are remain rights remain with you. You don't lose future financial benefits and whatnot. So just keep that in mind all the time. And we'll take another poll question now here related to IP. And Alex, if you can share that. So how well do we know, your organization's intellectual property protection policy? And I hope everyone would respond to this question because every organization has some sort of IP protection policy. We have 4 more responses. Okay, we can end the poll now and share results. So I'm happy to see, most people either fully understand or somewhat understand. And it's always good to, either go to, if you're working at university, look at your, you have some sort of UILO, like university industrializing offices or technology development offices, whatever the, department is, to check what their policies are for IP. because that will every university has very different policy. Somewhere you can have inventor own policy, whereas some places university owns the IP, and then you have to license it back from university to commercialize. So just having that understanding will help you plan, like, whether you want university to be even involved or your organization to be involved, like, or how you want to manage them as you move further. Now, battle is one, aspect of CRISPR, but in terms of, like, many how countries are approaching, like, patenting CRISPR related technologies within, like, biotechnology sector is also very interesting to watch. And this table, like, shows number of priority filing by country and percentage of total filings. And this later technology could be like, genome editing, therapeutics, diagnostics, bioproduction, drug screening, modified animal, modified plant, development, and so on. So here you can see that China is leading with like, almost 8,000 filings, and this data I believe is from 2023. And United States is, like, just behind China. So, and this report is from Patent and License Landscape from the Swiss Federal Institute of Intellectual Property. And what it says is that there are over 17,000 patent families covering CRISPR-related technologies across all sectors. And 14,000 claims are just covering, like, genome editing technologies. And from 2012 to 2019, US was leading this table, but then after an initial slow start, China took over. And now, as you see, it's leading. And in China, the Chinese Academy of Science and the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences are the top filers for patents, followed by universities. And again, what is missing from this list is, like, not surprisingly, Canada. So there may have, things changed a little bit since 2023, but still, like, we are not a recognizable power in this space. And if we look at priority falling just for modified plants as well, so this graph, like, is showing origin of modified plant priority filing by country. So US is certainly leading there, like, by all means, and China is a distant second, but again, Canada is nowhere to see. And I see this as concerning, again, because you'll see the impact of, like, not holding patents and, like, rights in the time to come. And if we don't take any action, there will be cost to this inaction, which would mean that, we would have weakened economic growth. Lower patent rate equals lower productivity and growth. Um, Offshoring of IP, we are known as an exporter of innovators, and we lose control of IP to foreign entities. Um, Lost high growth opportunities as well. Patent filing is associated with high employment, high quality job growth, and also with increase in high revenue growth. And there will also be technology gaps in the sector. So the lack of patents in key sectors such as genomics and AI, despite high public investment that we see as input, leaves us at a disadvantage if we don't have patents, like, in the global markets. And then low commercialization. And despite performing well in research, Canada will continue to struggle to turn that knowledge into patentable products and for commercialization purposes. So I hope that the initiatives, like, that we have started, like, in the last few years will improve on us getting more patents in the time to come. Do we have, I think we have a couple of questions I can see. Alex, happy to.
Yeah, we have one question in the chat. How does Canada's PNT regulations affect its adoption or use of new technologies?
PNT, can you spell that out? Sorry, I'm not, maybe missing that. What does that mean, PNT? I'm sorry, I'm not able to recognize that acronym.
Lester, feel free to come off mute or write in the chat. Plants with novel traits. Thanks, Lester.
Client with novel traits. So let me look at the questions. How does Canada's PNT regulations affect adoption of new? So I'm not very familiar, honestly, with this regulation. So I'm not able to answer this question what I know is that uh, like how we see gene editing is certainly has improved, because I think we for that, for gene edited crop, if you're referring to that in this as well, there we can gene edit crops, like, and we don't have to go through the regulatory process. We can, there is I think, a Transparency Act where we can disclose information to CFIA or to the bodies, but we are not really required to label it. But if it is beyond that, yeah, I'm not very familiar, so I'm not the best person to respond to this question. But if someone else from the group, like, knows about it, I'm happy to take a pause and have them. Ben has, yeah, like, shared some, information. So yeah. But I think in general, I can say that on the regulatory side, we need a lot of innovation, primarily because the world has changed, but our systems have not catch up, like, to the level it should. But again, like, Europe has a different approach to gene editing compared to US as well. So there are a lot of, like, different thought of schools as well. So
We've
um,
got one more question here. Is there a way to register a theoretical framework and process as an innovation in Canada?
I'm not very clear what that means. Again, sorry, but can you be more specific? Like, is it to how to start a company, or is part of the patent you're talking about? Like, if you want to, uh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, feel free to come off mute to ask your question.
Hello, can
Hi,
you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It means, my question is about I'm working as a senior researcher and policy making and for over 15 years in different countries. And right now, during last 2 years, working at the Gulf University with some process and working on some thinking about a specific process and conceptual framework about how to introduce a specific process to manage best management practice for innovation, working directly with local community, indigenous community, farmers, and other industry is related to some best management practice for them based on their text and context. But with a specific process. For example, the first step of this process is about making a trust for that community, and then go ahead with other steps. As far as I know, when I was in Iran, I couldn't find the solution or way to submit as an innovative idea, but it's theoretical and it's concrete, maybe it's not physical, and it was very difficult to submit this innovation for myself. I'm working to improve or renew every yearly, annually, but I don't know about in Canada because I have many ideas about this process, and I know it's crucial, aspect for agri-food system in Canada also.
No, thanks for, yeah, sharing your question and background as well. That's very helpful. So my recommendation would be that, you know, if you know the end user or your stakeholders, I would encourage you to work with them. You have, like, you can work with communities, like, organizations in your specific area as well. So if you are in Guelph or Ontario, for example, there you can think about specific associations, whether agriculture, agri-food related associations as well. If you talk to them, they would help you, like, either help identify like resources that might be, helpful for you to advance what you're doing. And you can also take to like funding organizations. Even Agric probably can be like a good resource as well, because you have people on the social and economic side as well working, and organizations like Ontario Genomics, for example, could be another one. So I think there are different resources. Bioenterprise Canada, I think, is also there as well. So these people might be best suited for you to connect with, and then scope like what you want to do with them.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And I have other question, but I know it's not maybe related to your topic. I'm an innovator for produce saffron in dark greenhouse. I had a pilot test in Iran and also match with uh, some companies in the Netherlands and make a very good networking with them. But in Canada, I have a problem for running this idea. It's very valuable product and it's easy, and the best market for that is about US, and Canada also is okay. But my challenge is about we were a team, two people. I was manager and making networking, national and international, and conduct many things for our pilot. But unfortunately, here I'm alone, and my colleague has the technical knowledge working on inside of dark greenhouse isn't here, and it's my problem. I don't know how to solve it, how to find, resubmit my teammate in here.
Again, thanks. I think this is a wonderful opportunity that you're highlighting, and the organizations I mentioned, if you reach out to them, I'm sure they have like some opportunities there where they can consider like how they can support you. But I'm also happy to speak to you in detail about this specific topic, because we support in BC like people with these kind of ideas as well. So I'm certainly happy to just email me, and I'm happy to have a call with you afterwards.
Thank you so much. Thank you. There is your email in here, yeah?
Yeah, I think that information either will be there or can be shared again, like if you don't have that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the like the financing side, like or venture financing, which is one of the most important, but also something we struggle. So I'm gonna just highlight general like things over there. I'm not an expert in financing, but I can at least talk about like as I showed in lab to market, that like the process is at least clear, like the steps you have to go through. But and you can get like most of early stage research, for example, can be funded through either tri-council funding. But when you are advancing from proof of concept to scaling up, your venture is at a very different world altogether, and you would need different sources of financing for that. So for initial phases, you have options to funding from like friends and family, incubators, accelerators, to validate the idea and develop a minimum viable product. But in most cases, and especially for scaling up, you would need venture capital, and these basic, but there are some outliers as well. Some companies have never actually had to go that route as well, but most companies have to. And what this, yeah, what this graph shows is that like, and this is from JP Morgan, which shows a startup needs two funding stages. So the early stages, where you are developing your product, needs seed or Series A funding. And as you grow your business, you will need like, Series B, C, D, and higher. And at the later stages, when you are maturing in your market and have traction, you look at Series E or crossover, in which, like typically late stage private investors who typically operate in the public market, such as hedge funds or mutual funds, they invest in a private company, often just before IPO, maybe 12 months before the initial public offering, and then they help you exit via an IPO or an acquisition. And in the agriculture agri-food sector, the current trend is that most company gets acquired. So you go through like an acquisition or merger rather than going through an IPO. And it is also important to note that the boundaries between these, the different funding stages can be quite fluid, and the classification of a company can vary depending upon the investor's perspective. And there isn't a strict standard for the size of funding rounds, specific like any specific milestones or so it often funder or investor driven approach and the company stage like status as well. So as I mentioned, early stage funding, friends and family, angel investors, crowdfunding, small business loans, incubator accelerators, or bootstrapping, which basically funding startup activities with your own money can be done. But when people looked at, and this is from PitchBook, when they observed pre-Series A funding and they did a breakdown of that, they noted that most funding, over 80% at the pre-Series A comes from seed funding, which involves like some disciplined investors, compared to grants, which was still higher, almost 11%, over 11%. But angel incubator crowdfunding is at a very low level compared to seed funding, for example. And these data are from US. Just keep that in mind. I'm not talking about Canadian data here. And if you want to see how much funding typically is attracted at different funding stage, so you can see that seed is typically the deal in the US or maiden US venture capital deals are starting at 3 million for seed round and goes to 11 million to Series A and then keeps increasing to a bit, eventually reaching over 100 million, for example, at Series G round. And naturally, as you will get more investors or you take money from people, venture dilutes ownership as they raise these funds. So typically in the seed round, as an investor, like if an investor acquires 25% of your ownership, so you lose that, and that continues, till the funds are needed. But keep in mind that there are several other options available to raise funds without losing equity. So there are non-dilutive sources that could be like in terms of repayable loan, debt financing, or grants from economic development agencies, such as Pacific Economic Development, in BC, which offers repayable loans to early stage companies as well. So always knowing all these options help you to arrange your finances well and also securing your equity as well. So again, yeah, it's very important for us that to have a clear understanding of our financing needs. It is best to develop a prototype while you are still employed, because then you don't have to worry about your finances. You can focus on just the development part of the work. And also make sure that your value proposition is clear. You know what is, you very well define the problem you're trying to solve, how unique your solution is, and how the impact of that solution would be on in the sector you're working. This information is very critical for the investor. And then it is also best to know the three these three acronyms I will explain. It says best to know that what first is total addressable market. So what is the market that can be addressed using your invention or discovery, and then what is the serviceable available market that you can focus on, and then out of that serviceable market, what is the obtainable market that you are trying to focus on? Because if you have clarity and understanding of these markets, your investor would have more confidence in you, and they can also assess how they are going to get their return on investment as well. So just knowing all these needs will help give investor more confidence and help them understand how they can invest and get a good return on that investment. And continuing on, the investment trend or investment in different biotech, especially related to agriculture, agri-food sectors. So this graph shows, it's from Global Agri-Food Tech Investment Report in 2026. And what the bars are showing is change in total funding by category in 2025 compared to 2024. And the dollar value shown below here talks about total deals, the dollar value of the deals made in 2025 within these verticals in the agriculture and agri-food sectors. So for example, if you look at the first one, agriculture biotechnology, the total number of deals were 10% lower in 2025 compared to 2024, but still the dollar value of the deals made in 2025 was $1.4 billion, which is same as in terms of deal. If you look at the farm management software and sensing and Internet of Things or IoT technologies. So that segment grew by 82%, but the dollar value of the deals were same as that of ag biotechnology. And similarly, you can see like different verticals which are categorized at upstream, which includes biotech, marketplace for fintech, and also bioenergy, biomaterial, and then midstream, and then also the downstream, like verticals within the agriculture, agri-food sectors. So this again gives you an idea which verticals are like more appealing in a particular environment, and then you can see whether the technology you're working on fits within that particular sector, and then what's the investment trend as well in that particular sector. Um, and some tips for managing fundraising process. Again, innovation's unique offering or value proposition needs to be clear. You need to know your target market, your scalability. And it is very important to build strong relationship across the way. So relationship building is key. Funders networks are crucial for their business success. For founders network are crucial for their business success. They unlock new investors, business partners, and clients, create your brand as well. Very important to avoid burning bridges. Everybody gets rejection and it's never personal. So venture capital is a small word. A founder should aim not to ruin any relationship, no matter how upsetting a situation may seem. Also, expect to talk to a lot of investors. Patience and perseverance are key here. And meetings, when you meet like different investors, you get a lot more knowledge, information, and sometimes like further connection. And sometimes these investors can serve as advisor or mentor in the beginning before they actually decide to invest in your business as well. And again, don't take it personally. It's never about you. It's about like how relevant that investment or the innovation is for their portfolio. So a number of factors play a role in that. And also keep your finances checked. Like every investor would like to see that you understand your finances well before they can actually invest in your startup. And there are many resources for funding available within academia. For example, UBC and NBC, which is a BC-based investment organization, Crown-owned. They launched Catalyst Venture Fund just a few days ago, which is focusing on life sciences and deep technology. Then there are other, like, in Ontario, for example, Brilliant Venture also exists. And then also CFAR in Toronto, they have a Catalyst Fund, which provide like high risk, high reward research for fellows and researchers. There are various government, like sources for funding as well. So Farms Credit Canada is one, and then you have Canadian Agri-Food Automation and Intelligence Network. There are regional development agencies. I highlighted Pacific Can, for example, in BC that support SMEs, and similar agencies are there like across the country. And AFC also runs this Agri-Innovate program, which offers repayable contribution to help commercialize companies. And then there are private investors like Tallgrass, NEA, and SVG Ventures, for example. Let's look at a couple of like, star entrepreneur scientists as Professor Alicia Main, who describes them. So one I wanted to highlight from Professor Alicia Main's work is Professor Bob Langer at MIT, and he is considered a star like entrepreneur, scientist entrepreneur. He has like over 30 ventures, over 1,400 papers, over 470,000 citations, which is a lot actually. I can never imagine how can reach there. And over 360 US patents, like he has secured and licensed over 300 companies. Patents are licensed to 300 companies as well. And he also like was co-founder of one of the major biotech companies. Any guess like in chat, and he would like to drop in like which company he co-founded actually and made significant returns on that. And just curious about like people's knowledge about him, but give a second or two maybe to that. Is there any response, Alex? I can't see the chat thing.
No, nothing yet.
So Moderna I'm sure everybody had, some of you must have vaccine from Moderna or and biotech as well, but BioNTech as well. But Moderna is one of the companies that Professor Langer co-founded, and certainly benefited a lot, and also benefited like billions of people as well, right, with that. Another example I can highlight is Professor Carl Hansen or Dr. Carl Hansen now. Professor Alicia Main has also reviewed his entrepreneurial journey as well. And those who are not familiar, like, he founded Appcelera, but he founded other companies as well across his academic journey, and now he's a full-time CEO of Appcelera. And this figure or image I wanted to show, not to just like, distract you from it's a fully crowded image, but to highlight, like, that it's never easy when we are successful. Like Appcelera got a, like, tremendous success during COVID time because they were able to identify a like therapeutic, like, which they commercialized with Eli Lilly, I believe. But it came from, like, the work started in early 2000, right? And it continued through his academic journey at first at Caltech as a PhD student, then at UBC, and then foundation of Appcelera in 2011, and then leading towards its IPO in 2020. But in these 20 years, he had been through many, like, stages for his discovery with primarily microfluidics technology, and also secured a lot of, like, different types of grants from NIH and discovery grants to also, like, from genomic enterprise as well, and from then DARPA, for example, was another one as well. So it just show you that a lot of work, a lot of efforts, go into what you are trying to create, and then in the end, some of them suddenly get like a lot more value, but others also get some value from this process. So, in the last section, I wanted to cover like how we can support this innovation ecosystem, because not everyone can be an entrepreneur or like for example, venture creator, but there are many ways for us to support as scientists, like, the innovation ecosystem. And again, featuring something that Ben, my colleague, would all be talking about, like, after I finish my presentation. But coming back to my first, like, change of mindset, like, when scientists are trained to commercialize their breakthrough innovations, they can learn the, like, how an entrepreneurial journey, like, takes place. So what are the different steps when you start from an idea to commercialize that idea eventually? And if you have good learning understanding about that process, you can either be a venture founder, but you can also be an industry champion, like, working with industry with complete knowledge about how scientific discoveries can be commercialized. So you bring a different perspective, and you can be a translational scientist while continuing to work in academia, but making sure that you are supporting that translational work, like, advancing discovery research into applied and translational side as well. So, like, you can be either, you can found well-endowed science-based university spin-off, as we saw, like Appcelera, but there are many other examples as well. So that would be like scientist entrepreneur pathway that one can take. As a champion of innovation path, like, on that path, you can increase science-based innovation in industry. You can support industry and companies to, like, advance innovation accurately. And then as a translation scientist path, like, working within academia, you can secure more funding for translational and applied work, like, and help future companies or future innovators to take those to the next step. Um, in my last slide, I would like to end by highlighting this, paper from Scientific Reports, which was focused on assessing entrepreneurial transformation in agriculture universities using hybrid multi-criteria decision making. And this report highlights that agriculture has received relatively less attention in entrepreneurship research compared to other sectors, which is prominent. We don't find much data or information on that. And this study identified the reward and support system as the highest ranking macro policy. So they made some recommendation for macro policy and strategies, and reward and support system was got the highest ranking in terms of macro policy. And the report also features recognizing and promoting entrepreneurial faculty and encouraging experiential learning as first and second strategies, for advancing innovation in the sector. So the findings of this report underscore existing gap in the development of effective strategies and provide actionable insights for policymakers seeking to enhance academic entrepreneurship in the agriculture sector. So this is all I had to share. I will now pass it to my colleague, Ben. And once he finish his um, presentation, we are happy to have further discussion and take more questions as well. Over to you, Ben.
Great. Thank you very much, Rahul. So my name is Ben Chow. I'm the Director of Ecosystem Development for the I2I Research and Innovation Institute here at SFU. So this time last year, we were one of four national entrepreneurship training programs to receive funding from a tri-agency call led by NSERC. So as a result of that call, we received $22.9 million for 5 years to deliver our suite of I2I programs. And it was, founded by Dr. Alicia Main, as Rahul mentioned, and our very first I2I program was delivered back in 2015, of which Rahul is an alum of that initial cohort. So our I2I program is designed by I2I researchers and developed and delivered for researchers like yourself on this call. So just on this first slide, um, this shows our national I2I network. So we've got 5 regions across the country, and those are the colored areas. Each of those regions has a regional lead or co-leads. So our regional leads are mainly faculty at some of our delivery partner institutions, which are shown in the upper right. And basically, they help with recruitment and in organizing events such as collision events, some recruitment events, as well as what we're doing right now is a collaborative learning experience. The organizations listed on the left support our programming, are active in the regions through recruitment, hosting events, participating in panels, and are provided guest speaking opportunities. So recruitment, we've got this next slide, which highlights our current program recruitment, which is our I2I skills training. So this is actually open to all graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, and faculty at any Canadian academic institution. There's quite a bit of information here, so I'll just focus on a few key points. So this is an asynchronous program, which runs for 8 months from September to April, with some synchronous elements, which are mainly around mentor sessions. So you actually get assigned a dedicated mentor that has experience in commercialization in your area. And that occurs usually in the second half of the program, so around January to April, actually right now in our current cohort. So the time commitment is around 5 to 8 hours, but that could ebb and flow. It really does depend on the course assignments and how well you know the information or the task at hand. We also provide $3,000 stipends to each I2I participant who satisfactorily completes the course modules. And this is to really allow them to focus on commercialization efforts. So if you're a graduate student, the $3,000 would help in terms of maybe perhaps not taking on that TA-ship. And so that way you can focus on some of the commercialization activities around your innovation idea or your research. So we have an early deadline of April 30th, and then May 15th is the final deadline. So this is for the cohort that would be coming in September of 2026. The next slide, jumped ahead. Our next slide just shows the whole program suite. So as I mentioned, the one on the left is our current one that we're recruiting for. But this just provides a summary, and we do have other programs which have already come and gone in terms of application and recruitment. We have the I2I Commercialization postdocs, as well as the I2I Faculty Innovation Fellows program. So we just recently completed that cycle of recruitment, and for the commercialization postdoc program, we received over 200 applications for just 10 spots, and that's a stipend program where each participant receives about $60,000. We also just recently completed our application for our faculty innovation fellows. So essentially, it's open to faculty at a Canadian post-secondary institution or research institute, and that's going to be running in the first week of May at Queen's University. We actually alternate between Queen's and SFU to afford the opportunities to various faculty that are obviously stretched across this country. So with the Queen's one, we do focus mainly, or we do support mostly the eastern part of the country where faculty are based. And then the next one we work with is integrated learning experiences. So today is an example of an integrated learning experience where we work with AGAT to deliver something that would be of value or of interest to a membership group such as yourselves. And then we are finally the last one, we're expanding and exploring outreach and co-creation of entrepreneurship training programs with Indigenous and North rural communities. And much of this is through some of our EDI initiatives. And then finally, our last slide just provides you some QR codes to our website, as well as please do follow us on LinkedIn. It's probably the best opportunity or best way of getting informed of future upcoming events, whether it's another recruitment event or it's another collision event that's happening in your region. So it's an opportunity to get the latest program information. That pretty well concludes the part that I wanted to share with the group here.
Ben?
I'll just turn this over back to Rahul and maybe to Alex. I'm not sure where the next step is, but yeah, maybe I'll turn it over to Rahul again.
Ben, would you mind sharing the background of the background image? Actually, that's also relevant to I2, right?
Sorry, the background of this image?
Yeah. So we are seeing a bunch of
Oh,
plants and behind that lady.
yeah, for sure. That's a great question to ask. So that's Dr. Stephanie Simmons. She is one of the leading researchers, and I think she's part of the federal government in terms of the quantum strategy for the next phase of what we're doing for quantum computing and quantum strategy. And so Dr. Stephanie Simmons, she had also taken part in the I2I program, and she founded a company called Photonics Inc. and recently raised some financing, Series A financing. I forgot what the exact amount. I'm tempted to say it's about 30 to 50 million is the number that I have in my mind, but I could be slightly off. But again, it's a great feat in terms of this came from her research lab, and basically what they were looking at is silicon and gallium, I think, as the base materials, chemical materials for the next generation of quantum computing, and a much cheaper and lower, I guess, widely accessible element that can be used to produce some of the semiconductors for quantum computing. And pictured here is actually the quantum chandelier. I don't know enough about it, but you can probably Google it and find out what exactly a quantum chandelier. But this is the main, I guess, innovation that's around quantum computing. And my understanding, and they have a facility here. They have a facility here that we recently visited. Not myself, but when we took this picture, it only comes out once, maybe twice a year, because for quantum computing, it has to go to really low absolute temperatures. I'm not sure how much Kelvin, but we're talking at maybe single digit kelvins. I'm not sure exactly, but it's very low temperature. So obviously it has to warm up to temperature, and then they open it. So that takes many hours and days for that to occur. Then obviously it has to get back down to temperature. So as you can tell by that whole process, it really does not come or see the light of day too much. But yeah, this is the quantum chandelier that they shared with us during this image. So you're seeing quite an exciting innovation that happened here at SFU, and Dr. Stephanie Simmons through the I2I program helped facilitate some of that learning and some of that activity to get to this point. Yeah, thank you, Rahul.
Thank you, Ben. I didn't mean to put you on spot, but you did a great job, highlighting. And I think Microsoft has committed over $100 million, I think $105 million to invest. Actually, I don't think it may be a staged way, but again, a great example of how I2I help, Dr. Stephen, Dr. Burners, right? Sorry, I forgot her last name, but like to advance photonics Inc., right?
Yes, that's right.
So thanks. So yeah, this is all we had to share with you all. And I'm happy to have any questions answered, or even if someone wants to share their own perspective about innovation in Canada and in the agriculture agri-food space, happy to hear their thoughts as well.